Hi, I'm Maggie. Thank you for stopping by Crafts the Charm today. You are most welcome here. Today we're going to finish our castle advent calendar. Let's go have some fun. There are so many different directions we could go with this, but the direction I'm going to go in is It's a Small World. And part of the reason is I just love the art. It's Mary Blair inspired art and I think it's beautiful. But another reason is it's got a clock tower, and the clock seems to have thrown off all of its numbers, so the numbers are sort of scattered, and I thought that was perfect for an advent calendar, especially one that has 12 compartments. So the 12 numbers from the clock face have been thrown off and they're on the doors, so I just thought that was really cute for an advent calendar. So what we're going to do now is embellish the outside of this a little bit to make it look a little bit more like It's a Small World. I don't trust myself to paint the geometric shapes, so I'm going to cut a few out of wood and put it on the outside. I'm also going to make the prizes, the things that you get out of the door, so I'm going to make those all toys that can be played with on this advent calendar. And I want to stress that these are very small, and the little beads on the doors are very small, and they're only glued on, so they could come off. So I want to stress that this advent calendar is not intended for a young child. This is for a child who does not put things in their mouth in a household where we're not concerned about anybody swallowing any of these pieces. Okay, that said, I have here these tumbling tower blocks from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to make planters with the tumbling tower blocks and 3 beads. So I'm going to take one of the blocks and I'm going to glue 3 beads to it, a larger bead and 2 smaller beads. In the fall, I picked up these cupcake picks from the Dollar Tree and they're shaped like flowers. So those are going to be the flowers. They fit pretty well into those holes that are in the beads. What I love about this idea is that the flowers can be taken out or put in, so I'm not going to glue the flowers in, but they would be in one door with the planter, and then the flowers can be a prop for play, or they can be put in the planter for decor. So I just used wood glue to glue the beads to the tumbling tower block, and the colors don't matter because we're going to be painting this, and I had cut the pick on the flower to make it the length that I want. I end up making flowers in 2 different lengths because I just think that's a little bit more interesting. On the front of the castle, or on the sides of the castle, where I had put those beads at the top of the columns, I confirmed that a bamboo skewer will slide into the hole in the bead. So I'm going to make little flags for the corners. So I just cut a length of bamboo skewer that felt like the right height for a flag. And I cut 2 of those, 1 for each side. And then I used some of the scrap wood that I had. I have a lot of pieces of smaller wood now from creating the basic castle shape. And so I'm just going to cut 2 like pennant style triangles and just try to make those the same size and basically even, and those will be little flags. And now I glued them on to sort of the top of the stick. I didn't try to glue them to the edge the way I did with the molding because I just thought that it would be a little bit more secure if it were sitting on top, and that means there's sort of a right side and a wrong side to the flag. So I made sure that they were pointing in different directions, so the right sides could be to the front and the wrong sides could be to the back or vice versa. And I thought I could embellish those little turrets with a little flower on each turret. So I cut the stem as close as I could to the flower, and then it required some sanding and trimming with my knife to get all the bits of wood out of there. And then I glued those to the turret. And the wonderful thing about this wood glue, I use Gorilla wood glue, but all wood glue might be the same, is that it's pretty sticky. So I just put those on and then just laid the castle back so that gravity would be helping me, and I didn't really clamp them or anything. A little bit of tape. Now I did want to fill in some of the messier areas with spackle because I did not do a perfect job with my cutting. So I put a little tape behind the holes in the base, which remember was a hanging sign, and then I filled that in with this spackle. And then at the top there are some gaps in that platform at the top, so I did just spackle that whole thing. Now I also wanted to make some gifts, and I thought that those flowers looked like bows, sort of squashed bows, but I thought that they would work for bows. So I took the tumbling tower blocks and I thought I would sort of layer those, so make like 2 boxes, one on top of the other. And I also used some of those little square blocks, the same ones that I put on the back. And I thought, like, if you're counting, we're going to have 12 compartments. I thought 2 compartments for the flowers and their little planters. So a planter and 3 flowers in one compartment, a planter and 3 flowers in another compartment. And then I thought the 3 square presents in one compartment. And, well, we're going to have to count up because now I can't remember if I was going to put the 2 larger boxes in one compartment or if I was going to put them in separate compartments. But so far we're up to either 4 or 5. Now, as I mentioned, I wanted to embellish the outside a little bit with some geometric shapes to make it look a little bit more like the outside of It's a Small World. And I'll put a picture here of the It's a Small World image that I'm working from. So I'm working from this image, which is white and gold and silver, a lot of metallic colors, and you can see there are a lot of geometric shapes on the outside of this. So I decided to copy some of the triangles, and so those would be for the front, and then I also wanted to put something around the arch. So I just cut some triangles and just glued them to each of those outside walls. Now you could do a lot more. There are still walls on the other side, the back of the building. There's the whole back of the walls and sides on the back as well. And I think like maybe the boxes that are, it looks almost like a checkerboard. I think that would be a neat pattern to recreate on this advent calendar. You know, you can pick and choose. Now here are some of the other items I purchased. So I had bought these wood shapes last year at Christmas, and I got these snowmen and I got these trees. I did not buy the angel shapes, and I did regret that. I wish I had bought the angels because I thought that they might be a little bit easier to make into figures. The little wings, I have since bought them. I've since found them at my Dollar Tree and bought them. And it looks like the little wings could easily be taken off. You can also buy little wood shapes, like little wood person shapes, pretty much anywhere, but I didn't want to spend any more money on this, so I decided to try with the snowman shapes. But so I have those, and I also bought this puzzle, and I thought I might use some of the shapes in the puzzle, but the only one I ended up using was the circle, and that's for the clock face. So this is basically optional because you certainly could cut a circle out of the wood that we bought from Amazon or some other piece of wood, or I did actually look for like a circle-shaped Christmas ornament cutout. I didn't see one at my Dollar Tree, but I feel like maybe a slightly larger circle would look better there. But that's where I'm going to put the clock face, but I'm not going to glue that on yet because I think it will be much easier for me to paint it off of the building and then glue it on after. These little puzzles, I've noticed that they're not all the same. So if you did plan to use little puzzle pieces and glue them to the front, just find one that has the shapes that you want. Like for symmetry, this one has, looks like, I think it had 2 pentagons and 2 stars. So I could have put the 2 pentagons and the 2 stars on if I wanted to, but I ended up not doing that. But I was just sort of looking at the piece and seeing where could I have put those different pieces. So I'm ready to paint now, and I did consider spray painting this piece. I don't know if it would have come out better, if it would have been easier, but I ended up just using the Apple Barrel White acrylic paint, and I'll say it took like 1 coat and a touch-up coat. It didn't really need 2 full coats, but I painted the whole thing. And here you want to be careful with your tracks for, you know, the little sliding doors. Mine were not all wide enough to accommodate painted doors and painted tracks, and so I ended up having to scrape a tiny bit of the paint out of some of them, and I also used soap to soap up my doors and make them easier to slide in and out. So that's just something to consider with the paint. Or if you haven't built this yet, to consider when you're building the tracks is to maybe make them a little bit wider than you think you need. I found it challenging to glue the pieces in. They slid around while I was trying to glue them, so I'm not sure if I could have easily put them exactly where I wanted them to go. And that's why I think some of them were looser than others, and some of the doors fit in quite easily and in fact quite well once painted, and others didn't. And I don't show it here, but I ended up needing a smaller brush to get at all the nooks and crannies inside those compartments, because it was a little awkward the way the thing is constructed. I had to go sort of through that castle door to get at some of them, but still the brush was too long. So I did end up using a short brush to finish up painting the inside of those. And I also painted all of the doors, so you can see I took their little masking tape markings and put them next to them so that I wouldn't lose track of which door was which. And everything is painted both sides, of course, so I did paint the bottom of the advent calendar, and I painted both sides of the doors. And I don't feel like that's the kind of thing I need to show you. You can take my word for that, and you can see it when it's finished. And so then I also painted the little pieces that I have so far. So I painted the clock face, just the base white, and I painted the little gifts, and I also painted the little flower pots. I painted it all little pieces. Now I went to Walmart and I bought all of the gold and silver paints that I thought might be pretty for this project. So I just sort of putting them out on a piece of paper here and choosing which ones I want to use. I didn't really like that silver that I had bought. I'm not sure how it would have looked on the piece, but I didn't use that. The two that I liked the best that I ended up using are Folk Art Metallic 660 Pure Gold and Folk Art Metallic 36269 Bronze Metal. And I used both of those just for a little bit of variety. I also invested in these Folk Art Premium Detail brushes. I don't think they were that expensive, maybe $5, I'm not sure, but I have no detail brushes, and I knew with these tiny little pieces I would not be able to paint them without detail brushes, and I am so glad I invested in these brushes. They were wonderful. You've probably seen me in the past paint with toothpicks. You will see me in the future paint with toothpicks, because I have a few videos coming up where I paint small details, and I did those videos before I did this one. So I would use these brushes if I had had them. They are well worth it. So what I painted on the piece, and you might decide to paint more things, you might be more ambitious with your painting, but I painted those wood pieces that I had glued on because, again, I didn't trust myself to try to paint any sort of geometric shapes by hand, but I thought I could paint the surface of a geometric shape. So most of the ones that I'm starting with are the pure gold. Those triangles on the sides are the pure gold. In the back, the triangles in the back are the bronze metal. Now, I also painted the little knobs on the doors, and some of them I did in the gold and some of them I did in the bronze, and then I painted the numbers on the doors. And I couldn't decide whether I wanted the numbers to go sort of basically in order or if I wanted to make them a little bit more random, and I settled on random. So again, I really have to keep track of which door is which. Now, when you're doing this, make sure that you're painting the numbers so that it's right side up. So sort of position the door where it's going to slide and then paint your number. This 2 that I paint first, I was really happy with that 2, and I painted it upside down. So I ended up having to redo that number, and that's because I have the castle facing me backwards, and so I just, where I thought it was going, I had it backwards because the castle was backwards, so I had to redo that one. But I painted those. I painted the flowers, I painted the flags, and I painted the beads on the planters, and I painted the bows or flowers on the presents. And for the little square presents, I also painted a ribbon going down 2 of the sides on the present. So that's how I chose to paint these. Now I'm using a very fine brush, and you're going to see me painting the face for the clock tower. But the truth is I did have to repaint this, so it's just much easier for me to paint fine detail if I'm very close to it. This is because I'm nearsighted, and if I take my glasses off, I can see really well up close. So I didn't like the way this came out when I first painted it, and so I painted over it white and repainted it with my head really close to it so I could see it. And when I repainted it, I used dots instead of lines around the little cheeks. Okay, so I've painted 6 snowmen white and 2 trees white. So you can, of course, paint whatever you want, put whatever you want in the little containers. You don't even have to put toys in the containers. But I guess I was thinking 1 little character in each box, 1 tree in each box, and then again the flowers and 1 planter in 2 boxes, and then the presents in 2 boxes. So that makes 12. But you can create as many things and put as many things in each box as you like. So with the trees, I just painted them in 2 different ways. One of them you can see I just covered with dots, and the other one I did the top and the bottom in the gold, and I left the middle white. Now with the little characters, here's my thinking. I originally debated whether I would keep them in the same color palette as the rest of the piece, but then what I decided is it would be fun to make them into some of my favorite little Disney characters. And they're snowmen, so they're going to be snowman versions of some of my favorite Disney characters. And I thought this would be possible because if you look at, for example, Disney pin collections, they'll make ice cream cones or cupcakes or pocketbooks in the style of different characters. So I thought a snowman wouldn't be too far-fetched as long as I kept the colors and some of the patterns of the different characters. So I thought maybe it would be fun for you to try to guess which characters I'm creating by looking at some of the paint colors. So I won't tell you right away what characters I'm painting. And I did these sort of in sets of 2. So here's the first 2. Okay, I think these 2 might be the hardest to guess, and they're not actually quite done, but those are supposed to be Pooh and Piglet, and that is an Ernest Shepard interpretation of Piglet, because I do like the original illustrations a little bit more than the Disney characters. Now, I do put a nose on Piglet. I just found that really challenging to do, and I do change Pooh's sweater so that it's more of a belly shirt, so it's going to be yellow at the bottom, and then I did give them each a sprig of holly on their hats later. Okay, so here's the next 2, and hopefully these are easier to guess than the first 2. And of course, you would be making your favorite characters or favorite characters of the people who are going to be playing with this advent calendar. And so yes, those are supposed to be Buzz and Woody. Now these next 2 I did separately, and I'm going to try to blur out the reference photo that is in the corner for this one. Let's see if you can guess who this is. And yes, that's Tiana, and originally I wasn't going to give her quite such a low neckline, but then I decided to do that because it allowed me to paint her little necklace. I also thought that with a princess who was wearing her hair up, the hat could kind of look a little bit like the updo. Now let's see if we can guess the next one and final one. So yes, that is supposed to be Cinderella. She's another princess who wears an updo. And I didn't do so great with her eyes, but I think I was able to fix them. And I realized that the lash line looked good, so I went back and put a lash line on Tiana as well. Now with Cinderella, I used that really pretty iridescent blue paint, and then I used just a solid sort of non-metallic blue paint for her gloves, and also for her headband sort of under the iridescent blue, because I didn't think the iridescent blue would work well over the yellow hair. So it's mostly done. I guess it could be done, but I felt like it really needed a little bit more along the tower, and on It's a Small World there are some gears, and I looked for wooden gears. I could have ordered some again. I didn't want to spend the money because I'm not sure what I would have used the rest of the wooden gears for, and I happened to have these metal gears which I had bought maybe at Joann a long time ago, So I decided to use 3 of those. I would have preferred gears that were different sizes. These are all roughly the same size, but they came in 3 different shapes. So I decided to use those 3 different shapes. And I painted 2 with the gold color and 1 with the bronze color. Even though they're already metal, they weren't the same colors as we have on the advent calendar. So I wanted to be consistent. And it took a good 2 coats and a touch up. Oh yes, here's the holly. But once the paint had dried, I just used wood glue and glued them on. And then I decided the tower just needed a little bit more, so I just painted some gold triangles. Now, everything really needs to be sealed. We don't want that paint to chip. So with the small pieces, everything got a complete coat of Mod Podge. With the advent calendar itself, I decided to spray it with a spray seal. So I used a clear matte spray seal, and I just gave that a couple of coats of clear matte spray seal just to seal in the paint. And that's it. Here it is. So what did you think of our advent calendar? I had so much fun making it, and I had fun painting the little snowmen to look like the Disney characters. I was a little worried that I wouldn't be able to convey what characters they are because of the snowman shapes, but I think because the Disney characters have such iconic colors and motifs that they do successfully convey who they are. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I would love to know maybe what characters you would have painted on the snowmen, or any other changes that you would have made to the advent calendar. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. That tells me that you enjoy this sort of content and I should bring you more. And if you enjoy this sort of content, please subscribe to Crafts the Charm. Thank you for spending time with me today. Take care.